Did we just watch Force Awakens? Or was it The Matrix Awakens?
Everyone, welcome back to AsArt with Nick and John. So it's been many years since 2003 when we had the last Matrix movie. Now we have a new one, but what do we think of it? So, Nick, I'm going to be interested to hear your thoughts of this first, just because,
it probably didn't help that we just went through and watched the other 3 Matrixes.
That's actually very true. So we should say on this channel, we just went through and watched the first 3 Matrix movies. And those are tough to stack up against because some of them are very good movies. I think it's safe to say most would say the first Matrix is the best, and they progressively get a little bit less in quality, but they're all good movies. And then so getting this new one, what was your
So right off the bat, I have to say, it's okay. You can't redo The Matrix. Like, it's such an iconic, great movie. And the themes and what it did at the time for visual effects and just blew everyone's minds away. It's going to be hard to recreate that magic.
Yes,
it's
for sure.
No matter what you do, no matter what characters you bring back or whatever, it's never going to hit that same Matrix level of excitement and glory and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Did it have a couple? I liked a couple of themes at the beginning. I was like digging. He was he was taking the blue pill. I was digging. He was in this loop, and he was just like, I have to break out of here. I was digging that kind of theme, but then it kind of lost me, which we're going to jump into like right away. I was digging some stuff. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I kind of like that metaphor. He wants to fly. He's jumping off a building, and they're like messing with his mind and stuff like that. I was kind of digging that, and I did like a couple of the new characters. Well, at least the girl with the blue hair. Bugs. I think that's her name, but is it Bugs? I can't. Like, her nickname is Bugs, right? Okay, I can't remember. But I enjoyed her character actually. I was like, oh, this is a cool character. But yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I just think Star Wars said it, or not Star Wars. South Park said it right. It's member berries, and like literally to the point where there's like a projector of the original movie.
Yeah, I mean, this is so. There's some very interesting things and ideas put in here, and it is fun to think about the themes and stuff put in here. But Nick is right. Like, this is the most self-referencing film I've probably ever seen in my entire life. I mean,
Space
more
Jam
so
was
than
like that, right? Too,
more,
right?
well, more so than Spaceballs that advertise their own stuff in the movie. I mean, it's like it's so. I mean, it definitely, and without those things to try and rekindle that emotional attachment you have with the characters, I think they actually, as much as I don't necessarily like that type of thing, I think they had to have those things for there to be any real emotional connection. So that kind of told me that
100%.
The movie wouldn't have worked without those.
And I feel like it's doing 3 different things here. I feel like it's trying to be like a meta, like commentary. I feel like they're trying to reboot it, and I feel like it's also a sequel.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things going on. It's like, pick what movie you're gonna be. Like, is this just gonna be a sequel? Is this a reboot, or is this just a meta commentary on your previous works?
Yeah.
Like, if I like the idea of going anyway with those, just go with one, because we literally went through him getting unplugged again, and like, and it's so funny because like they're trying to explain the Matrix to us again. We know what the Matrix is. We understand it. There was 3 movies. If you go back and watch our reviews, I comment how they're just constantly telling you what it is all the time. It's like, we've been explained to so much by now. You can stop explaining. Please stop explaining what the Matrix is.
And what you said early on, though, I very much agree with. And there's a lot more humor in this movie. And I would say it kind of was off-putting to me because I'm not expecting that in this Matrix movie in that way. But the humor that they made was valid in them taking a completely different approach. They're like, we need a new bullet, when they're talking about the game, we need a new bullet time. We need a new this, we need a new gimmick. And it's like, I'm sure these are all conversations that Lana Wachowski, I think is how you pronounce the name. When this movie was being written or going through iterations, I'm sure those were all conversations to be had. And it's like, man, it's hard. I mean, you hear about bands and movie makers where do we want to keep making the same album over and over because that's what people are expecting from us? Because if you make the same album or make the same movie, people are going to bash you for making the exact same thing. On the flip side, if you make something that's too different, which I would say maybe this is, then you get blasted for being too different. And you have to applaud Lana Wachowski and the people who made this film for actually taking a chance on something new, because the safer thing, Nick and I
kind of something new.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of something new. Yeah, that's kind of true.
It's basically the same thing. They're pulling Neo out to save the day, but this time the one is Trinity, I guess. And John, you know what song I had in my head the whole time? Back to the Future. The Power of Love.
Oh yeah.
It's like every time, like, you know, I've had a gripe with Matrix and Love for I just don't understand how it works with the Matrix and coding and stuff like that, but the love in this movie, just like the touch of hands and like the power that comes from love, is just like, I'm like, and the power of love. Jada Smith. I told you, John. I'm like, that's her in the movie, and you're like, who's this old lady? I'm like, no, I know it's her, so it has to be the same Neo because of like the age things and stuff like that. Like that's where the theory came from, because it's like, if she's still alive, there's no way there's another Neo at his age. Yeah, that would be there, kind of thing.
And you know, I did like that idea, because one thing you have, if you're trying to have the same Neo, have the same Trinity, and yet they're kind of in the same predicament, like he comments in the movie, it's like, well, all this stuff I did was not even worth it. And you know, Force Awakens, you know, Luke Skywalker supposedly, you know, and Anakin brought balance to the Force, and then we're back in this conflict again. At least in this case, they're like, no, what you did had a huge difference, and they show some of the results of like all this conflict they had. So in that regard, I like that they kind of gave some credit to the earlier movies, but it just...
they gave credit to the earlier movies in this movie for sure.
And not the right ways. And not the right ways.
So funny. This movie felt so slow paced to me, even though a lot happened. Like technically, all three of the last movies were in this movie. Like literally, he got pulled out. He went to Zion, and then he got plugged back in to defeat the computer. Like you know, think about like the ultimate boss battle almost again. Like it was literally the same. Like almost like if you took all three and you try to cram into one movie, I feel like. And it was even like making a deal at the end, like how he made a deal with, you know, it was just like, what the heck? They like literally.
But none of the things, if you're talking about redoing all these, going through all the three movies again, but none of these things are new concepts again. Exactly. And I feel like none of the new actors were better. I mean, I'm sorry. This is from being a kid in the 80s and early 90s. Like, I cannot see you as not Doogie Howser, sir. I'm sorry. I know you're supposed to be the new architect, but I cannot unsee Doogie Howser.
Neil Patrick Harris? Yes. I don't know if he is the new architect, though.
Well, he said my predecessor was all about numbers and facts and things like that, so I'm assuming he's supposed to be the architect. I assume that's
the little girl's the new Oracle.
Well, I mean, they said there's not an Oracle, but she was passed along some information about things, and yeah, it's kind of, one thing that theory, really,
John, the evil Oracle theory is dead.
Nick threw out like shotgun effect of theories just so he could try and brag stupidly that one of his theories stuck. But there's a few.
All right. Let's
there's
serious,
a few
John.
things that really were hard for me about this. So you're right. I kind of like some of the ideas that they were throwing out at the beginning. Some of the things in the movie I really did like, and
like on paper it sounds good.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the whole game thing was weird to me. I feel like that was kind of a force.
Yeah.
Honestly, all this felt like a big ad for them wanting to make a Matrix video game is really what it felt like me a lot. Because they had this new Unreal a couple weeks before this movie hit, this Unreal Engine 5 experience, which by the way was like the real, you know, old Matrix films where you're on the freeway, the shootout scene, which was kind of better than this movie. But I feel like they're kind of, it just felt weird that they're trying to do this Matrix game and it's Neo and then Agent Smith is his boss. And
that's a whole topic about Agent Smith too. Like, why not just do a new agent at that point and not even try to mimic the way he speaks and have it be because it's so hard to live up to Hugo Weaving's character of Mr. Smith. Like, why even try to compete with that? You know what I mean? And that's what was cool about the Morpheus character. I feel like he had like touches of Morpheus, but he really wasn't Morpheus. Like, you know, but it was like you kind of got the idea like, okay, he's kind of Morpheus, but he's not, kind of thing.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, like you said, you didn't need to have Agent Smith. He didn't play a hugely important role in this movie. Aside from having the flashbacks and having the member berries, you didn't really honestly need to even have a Morpheus-ish character in this because they weren't hugely important characters. I mean, honestly, Trinity wasn't even in a whole lot of this movie, in
I
a
know it
lot
felt
of
like
ways.
it was like an afterthought to make her the hero at the end. Like,
Yeah.
like
Oh,
hold
yes.
on,
Yeah.
let's give her the power to fly. Like, you came out of nowhere. It's like, how did she get it again?
Yeah. I mean, and so from what I understand, like, I'm just saying it because it's in the credits. The Wachowski brothers made this original Matrix series, and now we have the Wachowski sisters, and it seemed like they were wanting to do kind of girl power at the end. And I like the idea in this case of like Trinity kind of held everything together in that original trilogy, like she was like
No, she was
without
awesome.
yeah. I mean, she was an odd like again. I'll say it again. Like not having Lawrence Fishburne was a really hard thing for me in these movies. Nothing wrong
They
with
did
not
have a
having him.
statue to him though.
And
Were
I
you
love that
happy there's
stat. It was a badass looking statue. It was, but not having Lawrence Fishburne, really hard. They had to have, Trinity and Neo for sure. I wish we would have had more Trinity. The conversations between the two of them, and I don't think just because of nostalgia, but I liked some of the conversations of them. The conversations of them talking about how we feel like we're going through this loop, and it sounded, kind of like genuine conversations. I like that. But you're right. Like all of a sudden she's flying at the end. We didn't really have much of an arc for her in this, and all of a sudden she's flying at the end. I'm like, this is kind of weird,
Yeah, it was tough, and it's just because it was so rushed. Like the whole
Yes.
movie should have just been her, accepting getting out, and there shouldn't have been like a fight sequence where I mean, like the fight that big of a fight sequence wasn't necessary yet, especially because like Neo didn't even fully regain all of his powers and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
So the story beats they did focus on. By the way, Neil Patrick Harris had the longest supervillain explaining his plans monologue I've
Almost
ever
as
seen.
long as Dr. Evil.
Yeah, I mean, all he needed to do was like, like I was like, oh my gosh, like Doogie Howser has
There's
the
just so much
ultimate.
explaining in these Matrix movies. There's so much monologuing and like explaining of like the plot to the people. And then like for example, the second Matrix, right after the Oracle spends like 20 minutes telling what to do, who walks in to tell him what to do? Mr. Anderson. It's like choice.
But I feel like those weren't quite as drawn out. I mean, he was talking a long time in this.
But the architect does talk in the room. We
yes,
learned
that's
that.
true. Yeah. Now let me ask. So there was a lot of interesting conversation in this though, and the story beats that they did spend time on. So talking about the machines and how the machines had conflict because resources were short between them, and that's how the peace was kind of broken. So it's not like the humans and the machines, one of them broke their kind of peace agreement. And it's not like they were back at war. There's conflict, but did you like that idea of like things aren't perfect, but it's not like one is bad and one's not bad?
No.
Okay, well, that was
like,
very.
I was just thinking about it. Like, no, because it's not going with the main story arc. Like like it's in spurts. Like, I like the idea he's taking the blue pill. I liked. Maybe that was about it. But like, I don't know. One thing that threw me off too is it didn't look like we were in the Matrix.
And that's what I was going to say. That was one of the biggest things that I was very curious to see if you were going to bring up. And I'm sure many other people,
Especially shot with like natural light, which is so weird because I'm used to
Yeah.
like this green film noir, like harsh, the blacks and it's just like it's so dark and gritty, and we didn't get any of that.
And you noticed it even more when they did flash back to those moments where you saw the original Matrix movies. You're like, yeah, they had the green, kind of slightly crushed blacks where, what we mean by crushed blacks is you don't see the detail in the darker shadow areas, and it has a green tint to it. There was none of that in the Matrix. And I know it's supposed to be a new version of the Matrix, so maybe that's just not in there, at least it was supposed to be. But then you destroyed that.
Because now that I think about when the Oracle was sitting there at the end of the third movie, I don't remember it being green. And the sky was all colorful with rainbows, which they alluded to the rainbows in the sky thing.
Yeah.
Which was just
Yeah, I think it's another Lana Wachowski. So this is supposed to be. So I started to mention this, and I kind of lost my train of thought. So
sorry about that.
No. One of the Wachowskis did not return for this. One of the Wachowskis did, and the one that did return was saying this is kind of a more. I don't really have any new material to bring to this. No desire to go back, and I don't really have like a desire. Whereas I think Lana Wachowski that came back, like this is supposed to be a more personal-ish story, like drawing from that. Maybe I'm misquoting this. You guys can
I
read
think
down
it was
the
something
comments.
like she wanted to focus more on Neo and Trinity. Those are like her favorite characters, and that's why like Morpheus isn't in there too, like as much. It's more about Neo and Trinity's love. And I still don't get the power of love and how it works through the Matrix, unless it's my theory with the double Matrix. And another thing I think that hurt the movie, the action. There was no crazy, amazing action. It just felt like a normal action movie. There was no, like, you think of each movie and it all has its like iconic moments, right? You have like, you know, the first one obviously with bullet time and, you know, he's dodging the bullets, and even the beautiful sequence of them walking into the elevator room or whatever and just shooting up stuff in like a little space and everything's breaking, which is some of my favorite visual stuff
of
to
course.
date. But there was a little bit of kung fu, but there was like force pushes from Neo. And it was just like, I get like you use it once to like reference he can stop bullets, but when that's his only move.
So let me ask. So I was trying to look as I was watching. And this means it's probably not doing a great job of keeping me not interested, but suspending my disbelief, because I was entertained, because I was looking at it from a practicality standpoint. I'm thinking, okay, you know, Keanu Reeves, he's just killing it with John Wick, and he is doing like a lot of jiu-jitsu and a lot of judo throws. But is the wire work at his age a little bit harder to do? Is that hard on his body, you know, doing the kicks and the punches and stuff? Or, I mean, I'm assuming, especially versus the second and third Matrix movies, they probably did not have the same budget they did for those movies. The first Matrix movie, from what I understand, did not have much of a budget, but I'd be curious to see what the budget for the first Matrix movie and this one was. And I think that's probably something we could find out, but
I mean,
it
the
might
fight
just been a
scene
budget.
with him and Smith looked pretty cool. Like when he runs on the wall, like we had a couple of like he does the same punch move where he breaks a part of it's so funny how many references are to the original in this movie. But it looked pretty cool. Like I'll give it credit. Like that fight scene wasn't that bad. Like I was kind of digging that, but like most of it, dude, I don't know. And maybe it's because they gave some of the coolest shots to the new characters, where it just felt like, because like there were some cool shots in the hallway sequence at the beginning when they were kind of like going through the different doors. Like they had access to the keymaker's door or whatever, stuff like that. And that was like, there was like the hallway shot where she's like it's kind of like the movie Inception kind of thing, where they're like walking on the walls, and it was just cool. I was like, oh, that's cool. But the motorcycle sequence kind of threw me off.
Yeah, some of those, like the motorcycle sequence was probably longer than it needed to be. I mean, some beautiful shots. Like when we go back into the new Zion, it was beautiful, but just, I don't know. I mean,
I just have to say, what were my least favorite action beats of the last movies, John? Was like the multiple clone Mr. Smith fights, right? Because it was just like piles of bodies and there's no focus. What was most of the action sequences in this movie? Just bodies being thrown at them. Like I mean, I think it would have been better if they just did like a one-on-one fight with Neil Patrick Harris or something. You know what I mean? Where it's more of an intimate, you know, like hand combat stuff, and not just like, let's throw the whole city at them. Yeah, let's just have people jump out of buildings at them. Yeah, let's just do this. Just like, what the heck? Just like, you gotta have a moment where the characters can fight each other, at least like 1-to-1. That was nice about the third movie. At least he just fought Agent Smith as one-on-one, and it wasn't like the mass battle kind of thing. But
as we were going through the last three movies, I think that's one thing we were saying, is we liked the cramped quarters indoor fights a lot more than the outdoor fight scenes. And, you know, that last whole section on the motorcycle, that was a lot more of what we were getting, was just outdoors, plenty of room. And that confined space, just one-on-one or small groups, tended to be a lot more engaging and fun.
It's better for story, too. Yeah. It's like when Luke and Darth Vader fight, there's no one else there. It's just like one-on-one. And it's like almost the character developing itself.
Yes, for sure. So I'd have to say the thing that threw me off more than anything in this film,
more than everything we mentioned. Whoa, let's hear it. I really want to know what this is. Well, the cat threw you off.
The two biggest things was the whole game like subplot, and then
led to nothing.
Yeah, which led to nothing. Yeah, it led to nothing. I mean, I guess it was a plot device where Trinity to start to wonder like why it was. It didn't really serve a real purpose aside from in jokes. especially the whole game development for the sequel and how Warner Brothers is going to make it with or without them and stuff like that. But the other thing was just the general humor, and we hinted at that, but we didn't talk about it. But it just it
I don't know
took
if
me
it
out
was
of it
really
way
meant
too
to
much.
be humor. I just think it was to the point because we were in the Matrix and the comedy just doesn't belong in the Matrix, and even like some of the dialogue just didn't belong in the Matrix where it felt like it was humor.
No, I mean, in all the interviews that I've seen with Carrie-Anne Moss and John Wick, they're like, oh, yeah, what was surprising for you? What do you think people will find surprising? They're like, oh, the humor that Lana Wachowski's brought into this. And it's like, oh, and then it's like the Merovingian. Did you notice, like, the French guy is spouting off, he's like, I'll see you in the sequel. And like, I'm just like, God, it's not even funny, I mean, and again, I'm sure it's very hard to write comedy. It's probably very, very challenging, but
yeah, I know Kung Fu.
I still know Kung Fu. Yeah. I mean, some of those little one-liners are fine, but I mean, there was long periods of time where, minutes of the movie were dedicated to them trying to develop the sequel video game and, talking about this and that. It's like,
and just even like the end credit, like after the end credits, it's them talking about the game.
Oh, I didn't even stick around for that. There was more after that.
Wow. That's what you're giving us? Like you couldn't even see like Morpheus's grave and a hand burst out or something like that. He's like, I'm alive.
So let's just say this. So I'm a huge fan of the first 3 Matrix films.
Yes, he is. Go watch our films. I try to bash it a little bit, but John is a mighty man of defense.
Not having
it.
Yes.
He had the Captain America shield, like deflect, deflect, deflect. And I'm like, Hawkeye arrow, Hawkeye arrow, Hawkeye arrow.
No, I had my Morpheus glasses. Block. Yeah.
He's just like
red pill. Yeah, but so
red pill.
so my there was some fun ideas in this. Am I ever probably going to want to watch this movie again? Probably not.
I thought you were going to binge it this weekend.
The cool thing is, I'm glad we got it because you can always choose whether you want to watch this or not. There's nothing wrong with getting more movie options. Now, I was reading an article that I didn't finish, but they were saying, Matrix cast is ready to make a sequel. Now,
how much? How much are they getting paid?
Yeah. Does it make money? And if it makes money, they'll probably make more. So my question to you is, based on what we did get in this, and if there were some sections of this you did like, I feel like more than anything, they maybe would be setting this up for passing this on, like Force Awakens, passing this on to the new cast of characters and maybe expanding the world.
That's so tough, though, because the story revolves around the one.
That's true, and I don't think it would work without
you them. You would have to do a reboot with a new Matrix and a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be the way to reboot this thing. It's like you can't redo Harry Potter because Harry Potter was about the boy who lived. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you can't do a Harry Potter like you can't. Like you would have to just do something completely new. It can't be Harry Potter's storyline kind of thing.
Oh, but they did. They did Fantabulous Beasts Fantastic Beasts.
Fantabulous
Beasts. Yeah,
Fantastic Beasts is not doing so fantastic in the box office.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so are there beats in this that you think they could make solid? Whether it's, I mean, you look at The Witcher, they have the series, they're doing a prequel and they're doing, an animation. I mean,
series are different though, I feel like, and it's based off a book where like this was developed for a movie. Like it was probably developed for one movie. Like the whole idea is like, oh, then he becomes the one and he flies off into the sunset. Like, wow, it's so cool. And then they're like, we need 2 more movies and you got to make them the same year. And like, we got to just write shit.
But is there any ideas here that if they did make more, you think it would be fun for them to focus in on these things? Or do you think there wasn't enough here to really warrant going forward?
To me, if I am going to watch Matrix stuff, I kind of want to go like the Mandalorian route with it, or not even Mandalorian route, but just like a route where even if it takes place back in the universe we used to know, and it's just like other side stories that are anime or short stories and stuff like that. Like I would be more than happy with that. I don't need a full action movie of the next thing that's going to happen again, because it sounds like it was a loop in our original Matrix. And it sounds like it's always going to be a loop, and I can only watch a loop so many times before I get sick.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
like roller coaster loops. But
Yeah, you know what? I think you're right. My interest isn't so much is of what happens necessarily, where I have to know what happens to Neo and Trinity after this. I said in our other looking at the first Matrix trilogy, I was having as much fun, if not more, just seeing what was happening when Neo wasn't around. And I can't remember if it was when Trinity was in as well, but just seeing what was happening to the other characters in that world building. But it was within that Matrix during that period of time, that style. The aesthetic in this particular version, this movie that we got, didn't really interest me a whole lot. And I'm not saying it was bad. It's just the look of that movie is what, I would look for in a Matrix movie. All right, guys, down below, I'll be very curious to hear, Nick and I, what you guys thought of the new movie. We're just coming off of seeing the first three, which even if Matrix 2 is not as good as 1 and 3 is not as good as 2, are still very good movies. It's maybe not fair to judge this one in the context of those. So I'd be curious to hear what you thought of this new one down below. Would you be interested in seeing a new Matrix game, seeing more movies in this universe based off of this one? Or just your general thoughts? We'd love to hear all that down below. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you on the next AsArt.